was a huge update from George Martin talking about the Winds of Winter. I don't know exactly where he was at, but I saw the clip and it's been moved around YouTube where he said that Winds of Winter is roughly about 75% done and that he thinks he could have it finished in a winter or two.
Yeah, a lot of people were shocked to hear that because me and you have been pretty optimistic, and as well back in the day that things were getting done, that there was progress being made. I think everyone can kind of accept the fact that he probably did a large amount of rewrites at some point in the last 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But this was the first time we've heard a real percentage, right, from his mouth, and even if it is more like, let's say it's 60%, not 75, that's still way further along than a lot of the more pessimistic people would say. But I feel as if this is the home stretch. And we and you kind of said that whenever we started putting together how many POV chapters he's actually talked about finishing. Me and you both were like, this sounds like it's about 3/4 of the way. I think that's exactly what you and I had said. So this is some of the best news I've heard. I did see some people take it as a bad thing. That means 4 more years, but that's not how art works. Art and the motivation to do it and all that comes in spurts. And I feel like GRRM is having a great year. Between Giants football, House of the Dragon, and Elden Ring. I mean, he's just having a bang up year. And it really does seem, even whenever he's talking, that he's a little bit more into it than he has been. There are times where it feels like he might be dead inside whenever someone asks him about the wins and what he's like, it's the same update as always. I'm writing it. You can tell he just hates the questions. But there's progress, man. And it's super encouraging. And I've always said November 2024. We said it last time we were on the podcast, and I'm sticking to it. I think it might be
I'm starting to think you might be right, man. So he was on the late night. He was on Stephen Colbert. I think wasn't there another interview as well? It wasn't Colbert, but it was somebody else that he's
done quite a few. Yeah,
right, for the House of the Dragon. But I think it's gonna be a very big book, more than 1,500 pages, and I'm about 3/4 of the way done. The characters all interweave, and I'm actually finished with a couple of characters, but not others. I have to finish all that weaving. Colbert joked that it took 10 years to finish 75%. It means, at that rate, right? What's 75% of 10, whatever? It'll take you 3 years to finish, which Martin, joked as depressing. So right, but it was I did see I did see a little bit of that interview. It was kind of funny. They did talk a little bit about Elden Ring as well, and he sort of said, "Man, it's like they hit me up a couple years ago. Actually, it's kind of crazy to think about like just what that is."
Yeah, man,
that progression. And man, we also just got, he's got so much stuff going on. We just got this, right? The Rise of the Dragon book. So much stuff. We'll dive into that here in a second too.
But, some amazing art in that book. So the new art that was put out is really incredible. There's a new shot of the Iron Throne that I think is the best one ever.
Yeah.
Really exciting stuff.
Yeah. So just super, super cool. And yeah, we have a video where we did a huge breakdown of like every chapter that's ever been written. Some of those chapters from A Feast for Crows got pushed forward into A Dance of Dragons. And then some of the stuff that was going to be in Dance of Dragons, he wanted to get in there. He couldn't, and it's going to get automatically put into Winds of Winter. So, excuse me, does feel like we are pretty, close. He said he's 75%, which is still better than for years the sort of woe is me, I'll never get it done, you can blame me, whatever you want.
Yeah, and also the fact that like we were not sure if he was writing at some points, right? He even mentioned in the interview that he had went back and some chapters he had finished, he went back and rewrote them because they weren't good enough, which makes me happy because if he wanted to get it out, he could get this book out, right? But he's still taking his time and working his way through it. The one thing, Matt, that I thought was really interesting is that he said it's going to be bigger than Dance with Dragons and A Storm of Swords. And then he also mentioned what happens when I hand over a 1,700 page manuscript to the publisher, whether they're going to want to split it or do something else with it, because there are binding limitations, especially nowadays. Brandon Sanderson's been publishing some like 1,300 page chonkers. So I would hope that they, after editing, maybe it would be around there so they'd be able to publish it. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we saw something that happened to actually one of George's favorite writers, Tad Williams. He was finishing up a fantasy series and he was releasing the third book of a trilogy and they had to split it. And they said, we're going to release this one now. And then in like 6 months to 12 months, we'll release the next one. So I'm very curious if Winds of Winter is going to be split. It wouldn't be a Dance of Dragons Feast for Crow situation, I don't think. I think it would probably be more likely to be, because now that the POVs are intertwining, whereas Feast and Dance, they were very far apart. I think that you could probably find like a midway point and cut the book, which is definitely not the case whenever you look at Feast and Dance and the way that they're kind of written. So very curious if something that we've speculated for a long time now, we've said that it's going to be more than 7 books. We might be seeing books 6 and 7 just out of Winds of Winter. That could happen.
Right. And it is important to remember too. I know on the European versions, yes, they are split. They're split. Some of the books are split. And it's like, because I remember the first time we received an email and someone was like, yeah, I'm in volume 2 of like Storm of Swords. And I was like, what are you talking about? And it is. It's a thing. It's a thing over there. Yeah.
One of my good friends, AP from Ireland, he actually told me, he's like, yeah, I found Storm of Swords to be very boring. And I was like, wait, what? And then I found out that he had only read the first part. He had not actually finished the second part. So he never got to Red Wedding or any of the goodness that we know. So and I was like bewildered by it. I was like, wait, what do you mean it was boring? Like, it's the best fantasy book ever written, in my opinion. And it turns out that, obviously they split stuff more so in Europe than they do in America. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that. I'm a pretty big, I'm a supporter of letting the artist give us the story and the art in the form that they wanted to put it in. I don't like publishing restrictions, but if the book, even after editing, is 1,500 pages, I mean, there's a very large chance that they'll have to split it. So
yeah, and I'd be fine with it. I think it could work well, and then you could actually, who knows, you could even add in an extra chapter or something, because if you're like, okay, well, now that this one's going to be done, I can go back in. And we talked about, I think you should have split it in the first place, because at least then you'll have published something. And then maybe that changes your frame of mind to go back and think, okay, well, now I'm done there.
Yeah.
Because you never know. Maybe I need to go back and change something I've already written. Right. So then you just keep working and working and working and working, and you'll never get anywhere. But at least once you publish it and it's out there, it's hard to go back and say, well, I want to retcon that or change that.
And that is very true. One of the reasons why I think maybe this hasn't happened prior is, one, George is probably stubborn, but two, this comes actually from publishing. And I learned this from interviewing authors over on my YouTube channel, but publishers really prefer, especially in fantasy, for books to be as thick with 3 C's as possible, because they want to make sure that the customer is feeling they're getting their money's worth out of the book. And they've done studies. People are more likely to pick up a bigger book, even if they don't have intentions of finishing it ever, than to pick up a small book, especially in the fantasy genre. So I do wonder sometimes if maybe George is like, could I split this up more? And the publisher's like, absolutely not. Like, we need it to be a doorstop,
Yeah, I know. It's just wild though. I mean, do you think a publisher would really push back? Because it'd be one thing if it was like,
if it was an up and comer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing. And I know you've interviewed like Steven Erickson, who did Malazan, and you were doing another. Who are you interviewing today? I'm
Jenny Wartz, who did The Wars of Light and Shadow back in the 90s. And she's actually wrapping up an 11-book series this year, which is crazy. I've also interviewed Christopher Rocchio, who is writing the Sun Eater series.
Right. And no offense to any of them. I mean, they're all great authors, but they don't have the single biggest hit on television show.
Yeah, certainly. He has a lot more pull than
right.
There was something in that interview that kind of shocked me, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but he actually said that he was working on the Winds of Winter. And whenever they figured out that they wanted to do House of the Dragon, which is a couple of years ago, like way before we ever knew about it, Penguin Random House pushed him to work on Fire and Blood. They said, you need to finish this book before you work on Winds of Winter. So they do have some leverage over him from contracts and such. But you're 100% correct. Like, George is probably like a large percentage of Penguin Random House. It's like Patrick Rothfuss and DAW books. Like Patrick Rothfuss, like, definitely, keeps them. just based on sales of Name of the Wind. So I would assume that if he wanted to split his books, he could have them split. So
yeah.